Some of our favorite professional athletes have been quoted recently about how they invest their money, and so we want to react. Hi, I'm Bridget Sullivan Mermel, and I own a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm John Scherer. I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin. And before we get into our pro athlete investment discussion, I want to remind everybody to hit that subscribe button. It helps other people find this information on YouTube. So with that, let's jump in.
All right, so here's our first athlete, okay?
Yeah.
Here's Blake Griffin. He's a Boston Celtic, and this is what he talks about, learning about more about allocating capital. Do you like the product? Do you actually believe in the product? It's hard to get excited about something, get behind something and add value to something you don't really care about.
That's interesting, isn't that? And it's, as you described it in this article, was sort of talking about, hey, here's how these people invest, and they didn't say it out loud, but this is sort of how you should invest, sort of a thing.
Well, I
right?
think there's a implication, yeah.
Yeah. And so as you talk about, is it a product you like? That's the one that really jumped out at me in hearing what he had to say is, it's just it makes sense. Like, I get what the concept is,
right.
But it's such a dissonant thing when you understand how the investments work and how that goes. Is just because you like something does not mean that it's a good investment. Right? And there's so many examples of this, and I use it all the time. I imagine you do too with clients. But, back in the 90s, I liked Netscape. I thought that was a great web browser. That doesn't mean it was a great investment. Right? And you think about, cars, automobiles. This has changed the world. Boy, everybody's using cars back in the 1930s or 40s when that became a thing. There were 200 plus car manufacturers in the United States, and now we can count them on one hand, right? Doesn't mean that it's a great product. Does not necessarily mean that it's a great investment, but it's counterintuitive because it feels like it should be. Oh, there's all these people lined up to go to whatever restaurant or to buy this product, or everybody's using this. That must be a great place to invest, and those things just don't match up all the time.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point, and I actually think that his quote is better for if you're looking for a job.
Interesting.
Than if you are investing. So if you're looking for a job, it is hard to add value if you don't believe in what the company is doing.
Yeah.
But, and when you're looking for a job, you're trying to add value. And a company is trying to add value. So I think that this quote is, I kind of like the quote for a different topic.
Purpose, right.
Yeah. So anyway, he goes on. You hear the horror stories of guys spending all their money. There was a documentary about all the guys who had gone broke 3 years after they were done playing. And those were terrifying to me.
That's interesting. My reaction to that is that's a great approach to take. You shouldn't follow in their paths.
Right.
But what does that have to do with investing in companies that you like their product?
Right.
Sort of a dissonant. And in fairness, right, when you have interviews, that might not be exactly what he said, or in the journalist's favor, hey, I got all these things, I got to put some things in a limited space, right? So not to knock either the author or the athlete in this case. So maybe what we're reading is not exactly what was said.
Well,
right?
I think I give him credit. He's actually trying to be careful, and he knows what he doesn't want to have happen, which is actually a part of investing, I would say, and handling your money. It's like, okay, I know what I don't want,
right?
Which is
it reminds me of an article I'd read a long time ago about a star athlete and had some of these money problems, and what he had done is invested in a local business. He knew a person. It was a restaurant. And you think about it, here's a great restaurant, a lot of people, they'd go there. So I believe in it, I support it, but it ended up going belly up for I don't know the details on why, right? For various things. That's a tough business to be in.
Yeah, exactly.
But so here's something where I believe in the product, there's honest people doing, right? I want to promote, I want to be invested. Not a dumb decision to make is to put money into things that you believe in, but then the results are, hey, how are we making money on this deal, right? At the end of the day, an investment is how do you get return on your money for things, right? And separating out, and maybe that goes to a lot of, as we talk with clients and with viewers here on, it's separating the emotions from the facts sort of thing, right? Emotions play a big part in our behaviors and how we act. Like, it makes sense from a financial planning standpoint, absolutely, from the investment standpoint, more so, the more we can get some distance from that and say, listen, I don't want to be emotionally attached to this particular investment or this particular strategy and go, I want to reach my goals and not be tied to that. Maybe that speaks to those things, maybe a little bit under the surface on the article on things, but something that might be useful for folks.
All right. He claimed his mom has always been fiscally responsible and even joined in on his early financial meetings and negotiations as an NBA player. I was finally like, okay, Mom, I got it from here. But I appreciate that about my mom because she was always looking out for me.
Yeah.
That's kind of sweet.
It is. And, it made me think we just, we had a conversation, and we work with a number of folks in our business that are single. And having somebody else sit in on the conversation, whether it's another family member or things, we encourage it because it just can be difficult, right? And you think about what he's describing here as a young person coming out, making all kinds of money, having mom be able to help out, awesome.
Right.
But for for us, it's a lot, especially when you're talking about your money or thinking through your money, having somebody else to think about a decision. If you're doing it yourself, if you're coming in and talk with an advisor, having somebody else that can hear what goes on and you can talk about it afterwards. How many times do you watch a movie and maybe you watch it again and you pick up things you didn't pick up the first time? Those exact same things were in the movie the first time you watched it, right? But you didn't catch it. Having somebody else sit in on things with you, I think that could be a really good takeaway from this.
Yeah, and I would say it depends on the parent.
Right.
And by the time you are negotiating with the NBA, you know your parents pretty well.
Yeah,
right. And so most parents, there would probably be, they'd at least know what their limits were and be helpful.
Yeah.
But there's the occasional parent that is might not be so great, but the thing is, again, you would know it. By the time you're that age, you have an accurate
idea,
assessment of your parents.
Have somebody else sit in on your meetings, but have somebody that you think would add value to it, right?
Right, exactly. Okay.
So there was another athlete quoted in this article, and I want to get your reaction to this. So it was Sloane Stevens, tennis professional.
I'm familiar with. Yeah.
And it was interesting that so one thing in the article, not a quote from her, is that her husband for her birthday. Fiance, thank you, gave her a group of stocks for her most recent birthday. And she said it fostered a deeper interest in investing in the companies she aligns with. And I'm just interested in your reaction to that because you do a lot of work on gifting and happiness and things. Gifting stocks to your partner for their birthday?
It wouldn't be good if it... Well, first of all, you got to look at, did they happen to be interested? Is it about you or is it about them? Okay. So in this case, it sounds the way that they're presenting it. Again, back to your cautions about how these things are written. The way they're presenting is she wasn't that interested, and he gave her some stocks, and then she became more interested. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's about him. Okay, but he thinks maybe she's interested. So if you're doing a this is about me type of gift, you want to maybe give her something else too. That's about her.
Yeah, interesting.
So it's a fine gift, but again, the content, so as a gift, that's one thing. But then as an investment strategy, again, we talked about these are my favorite companies. Now, I am actually not as opposed to investing in your favorite companies as you are, I think, because I tell people, okay, we'll have a fund money account, and 10% of your income, or your investments, let's put it in that account, and you can just go and buy whatever your favorite companies are with that and watch them. And if that helps you get engaged and have fun with this, that's great. But that's not going to be most of your portfolio. That's going to be the fun part. It just you don't eat all dessert.
Yeah, right.
You try to have fun with the all the protein and etc. And I would imagine Sloane's pretty careful about her diet. So it's a similar situation.
And thanks for bringing that up. And we have similar metrics on it. It's not wrong to have. It's not like you can't make money in individual stocks and following things.
Yeah, it can be fun. Yeah.
Right, but it's a slice. It's not it's the dessert and not the meal. I love that.
Exactly.
Talking about perhaps Sloane Stevens' diet. One of her quotes that was in here. So she said of this gift from her fiance, it was all my favorite companies, just a random amount of companies. My favorite place to eat is Potbelly, a sandwich shop. So it was Potbelly and Starbucks and McDonald's. And why not invest in something that I believe in? So just a curiosity that some restaurants that I would not have necessarily associated with a high level athlete, but
Right.
interesting on that. But what about that where it's investing in something I believe in?
We've done an entire episode, which I'll link to, about investing in what you believe in and my take on it. So some people, that's what they want to do. I think that usually it's not about things like the brands I like to purchase, but it's more about the values that I hold dear. So I think about people who are interested in things like environmentalism or companies that are giving back or that type of thing. So that could be actually with the brands that she's talking about. But I think that it would be usually when people are thinking about investing in the things they believe in, it's not about the sandwich. It's about
the cause, the mission, those sorts of things,
and
right?
like McDonald's is actually an interesting example because with a pro athlete talking about investing in because they believe in him, some people might think like, well, what's there to believe in? And actually, it's got like the highest diversity. They promote more women and more, and it's a global company that does that.
More than a hamburger and fries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's got a lot to there's a lot of there could be things that she believes in more than just the fries.
Yeah, interesting. So it's interesting taking a look at what in this case, these pro athletes are talking about, and there's some things under the surface that could be some really good takeaways. One of the things I thought about in having this conversation is, just because somebody is a good athlete, a good movie actor, those sort of things, that tends to lend credibility to, hey, here's this article that you should follow.
Right.
And, it's one of those things that be mindful, I think, of what you're watching and what the influence is on you is one of the takeaways I have from this. That, if one of these folks is talking about how to be a better athlete or how to be healthier or more physically fit, I'd probably that's probably worth paying attention to. The idea of investment advice and other things, maybe a little bit less meaningful from that standpoint.
Yeah, and I'd really like her help with my serve.
Yeah, right. That's a perfect thing on the investment advice. Perhaps
that would be
not necessarily, not to say it's not good advice, right? But you can go, okay, wait a minute, where's the expertise?
Yeah, and where's this coming from?
Yeah,
I wonder about that. Yeah,
useful way to think about it. That's a great place to wrap things up here. Again, I'm John Scherer. I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I'm Bridget Sullivan, Mermel, and I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. John and I are both members of ACP, or the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners, and we've got advisors all over the country that kind of think like we do. And so but John and I are both taking clients, but if you're in another area of the country and you'd like to meet somebody face-to-face, you can check out acplanners.org.
And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.